Good morning everyone, SigmaOni here and welcome to this video. Today I wanted to talk about Tokyo Twilight Ghost Hunters Daybreak Special Gigs, the re-edition of Tokyo Twilight Ghost Hunters, again developed by Tokyo Inc., which was originally released for PS3 and PS Vita in 2014 in Japan and 2015 in the rest of the world. The renovated edition of this game was released initially on PS3, PS4 and PS Vita in Japan in 2015 and in the rest of the world in 2016 because, Japan tends to have a market that for them isn't appealing to the Western people, only to then found that in reality it is. Then it was also released on PC in 2017, and that is the edition I am going to talk about in this video. The game is a visual novel slash SRPG where a renameable yet mute protagonist can see ghosts, and because of this, he is dragged together with his classmate Sayuri Mifune in the Gatekeepers, an occult publisher that in reality is a group of people who fight ghosts for a living. From there we will start helping them out in their job, trying to win over every ghost we will come across. Now, this game is organized in an episodic way, and in the end, what it tries to do is to be an anime season with even an opening and an ending at the start and then the end of each episode. Because of this, the overall story is left aside for a more episodic format, where every chapter has its own story that normally isn't brought up ever again. However, this time, there are some recurrent chapters and events are brought up a bit more, especially towards the end, where the last 4 chapters start to connect themselves and try to give to the game a sort of unitary plot, whereas before it was only an episodic game. However, the game does best in the episodic section rather than when it tries to bring everything up to a plot, a theme that starts to emerge towards the end of the 9th chapter, from which the story starts to become almost uninteresting and, in general, loses in terms of quality. Moreover, this game doesn't really try to do anything new, and it always gives off the impression of being something already seen. The Daybreak edition of this game also adds particular events with the subtitle Daybreak that should give you more info on the characters that join your party, but they tend to be a bit boring and only to make you wish for them to end as fast as possible. That is, except for the one of Yuki, I honestly feel that this Daybreak scenario was the best written thing in the entire game, and I don't even like the charter. These events also trigger only if that character joins your party, so if it doesn't, you will not have to play them. As for the finals, there is a variation of the ending for every character in your party, which amounts to a total of around 12 endings. Every ending depends on your affection with the characters, but in the end, what happens is always the same. Now, I have to say that the final is honestly good and unexpected. What happens in the last chapter can be honestly enjoyed, especially for a simple actions that happens at the end of chapter 12, but they goddamn ruin everything with the post-credits scene. Like, seriously, the game ends with a discussion with your most intimate team member, the credits start to roll, and then you have that last credit scene. It just ruins everything and makes the final become only a joke. There are a lot of characters in this game that join your party throughout all the story, with the last recruitable characters being recruitable in chapter 11 if I'm not wrong. However, their quality tends to decrease the more you advance in the story. If the characters you see at the start and that, in the end, are the real main characters in this game, such as Shin or Mifune, are honestly well developed and are shown a lot during the game, recruitable characters later on only get a bit of screen time during their chapter and the Daybreak section, and then they disappear without ever reappearing again in the story. This was obviously made because recruitable characters can also not be recruited, a thing which would have made the development team have more work to do in order to counter this problem. Imagine if I make a determinate character appear in a scene and you don't have it in your party. They have to wonder how to resolve this problem, and the two fastest solutions to this are make the character obligatory to recruit, or you just don't include them at all, which is probably why they do not appear during story dialogues. In any case, the characters tend to fall into the classic anime archetypes, and I will give you some examples. The tsundere, the Japanese ideal, the weeb, kanji, the genius, and so on. Don't get me wrong, they can still be enjoyed, but with the little amount of interactions you will get with certain characters, you won't really grow attached to them, and because of this their quality is overall really shallow, again, except for the main characters, who have a decent characterization. As I've said before, every character can be recruited or not, but if you want to recruit them, then good luck with that, as the only method to recruit them is to have a certain amount of affection with them that you can earn only by choosing certain choices during the few dialogues you are going to have with them. How do I know if I have enough affection? Only at the end of the chapter. If you can actually recruit the character in question, there is no other way to check it. So yeah, either you really want to waste your time trying different options, and you will see why I'm saying that later on, or you will follow a guide. This game also presents some recurring secondary characters that honestly aren't really that well developed, and they appear only because the plot requires them or because, I don't know, the writer wanted to make them have more screen time than some of your actual team members. Talking a bit about the protagonist, at the start of the game you can choose some background info such as where you were born, what club are you in, your height and weight, your blood type and so on, which I don't think have any real relevance on the gameplay itself, but it is a nice touch to make the character more customizable. Moreover, every other character that will join your team will have a similar background available for you to read, which is a nice little thing that can give a little bit of background to them and make them seem more than just generic characters. The gameplay of this game is divided into two parts, the visual novel part and the SRPG gameplay part. The visual novel part is what the game does better, succeeding in being a good visual novel experience with good dialogues and, in general, a good writing, but even here things aren't perfect. You see, the particularity of this game in its visual novel section is the 5 senses wheel, a wheel that sometimes appears and where you can choose what to do in certain situations. You can choose your emotion between happy, flirting, sad/investigating, angry or ignore, and then between 5 actions, each of one pertaining to one of the human 5 senses. You can touch things, which 9 times out of 10 will result in an handshake, use your mouth, which will either result in you kissing someone or in you licking someone, smell, look or hear. Now, this is honestly a quite cool feature, even though it could have been implemented a little better, but there is just a tiny little problem. This thing here is not explained at all. Like, you are thrown into the game and you have to learn it without any help whatsoever. It's just confusing, especially at first, and this is not the only unexplained thing in the game. In fact, this game has a tendency not to really explain you just some kind of important things, which is a bad design choice just because they are a vital feature of the game. If you don't explain them to the player, it can surely figure it out in a way or another, but it will hinder its experience a bit. For example, there is a really useful feature where, before going to the next chapter, you can touch a button and that permits you to talk with your teammates to increase your affection with them. But do you think that the game even remotely tells about its existence? No, you have to figure it out by yourselves. Speaking of affection, I said near the start of the video that the ending you get is based on the affection that you have with your teammates, but you know a funny thing? The game doesn't let you know in any possible way the amount of affection you have with your teammates and, subsequently, the ending you're going to get. Now, it honestly isn't a problem if you focus only on one charter, but if you want to diversify like you're investing into stocks, then you're going to have to remember every interaction with the various members if you want to try to get a specific charter's ending. Also knowing that Mifune and Sheena are going to have an advantage on everyone else because they actually appear in the main story, and so it is easier to earn affection with them as they have more dialogues and so more chances to get affection points. Returning to the actual visual novel aspect of this game, Tokyo Twilight Ghost Hunters also doesn't let you save during its visual novel part, which... why? I mean, it is a basic element of every visual novel to be able to save everywhere you want, and you take that away? That is also why I say you will probably waste your time if you don't actually succeed in recruiting a charter the first time, because that means that you have to replay the whole chapter, as you can only save before the chapter battle, and that sometimes it doesn't even happen, before progressing to the next chapter. Now, let's talk about the SRPG part and damn if it is a mess. Okay, to be fair, it is quite solid as a RPG. You can see that they put a lot of thoughts into it, but it still has a lot of problems. First, it is heavy dependent on items. At the start of each battle, you can put on the ground a determined number of traps that range from causing damages to the ghosts to keep them from moving on a certain tile thanks to the legendary Salt, your best friend in this game. In this stage, you can also see where the main ghost you have to defeat is likely to spawn, and this makes things easier, in a certain way. I will illustrate you how the majority of your late game battles are going to be. You enter the stage once, locate where the ghost spawns, then restart the stage and put Salt only around where it will spawn so that it will be impossible for it to move and you will have an easy time beating it. Sure, it is a cheesy way to win, but later on you will understand that this is the best tactic to use. Second, it is too much random. This is especially true when ghosts haven't noticed you, because they won't have a pattern when moving, they will just roam around without any reason. Identifying ghosts sometimes is really hard, and many times the turns aren't many enough to permit you to actually find and defeat the ghost with ease. However, it is easier when they notice you, because under their name they will have a light that indicates whose teammate they are going to target. This makes things incredibly easier, as it will be quite simple, knowing what it is going for, to actually elaborate a strategy to counter the ghost's actions. Third, the exp scaling at the end of the game. I don't know why, but Daybreak scenarios and the last 3 chapters have bosses of absurd levels. The game behaves itself rather good during the entire game, with a good exp scaling system, but then it suddenly spikes up in difficulty and it becomes hellish, especially with chapter 12 and 13 bosses. They are going to be quite painful to go through at first. It is still beatable even when severely underleveled, as I have beaten the game with a party that practically was half the level of the final boss, but I just can't bring myself to find an explanation for the sudden spike in difficulty, and it sort of makes you want to go exp grinding, which is really boring in general, but in this game it transcends boredom to become even greater boredom, with the true ways of obtaining exp being only doing repetitive side missions or playing a table game, which I will discuss about later. 4. Weapons. Obtaining good weapons in this game is hell, and that is because you can obtain them only in 3 ways: by obtaining them as missions rewards, by obtaining them after trading with only of your teammates, or by winning them at the lottery rift of the shop. If you notice, I didn't say that you can buy them, and that is because you can't. Hey, this is SigmaOni from the future. So, remember when I said that you can actually buy weapons in this game? Well, I discovered you actually can. There is a banner on the Gatekeeper's website that takes you to a website where you can actually buy things with credits obtained by clearing secondary missions and missions of the main story. Now, I think the only weapon you can buy here is a jade statue, but still you can buy weapons in this game, so what I previously said is actually incorrect. Still, this is another thing that goes into the list of things that the game has but it doesn't explain, so yeah, okay. Anyway, let's go on with the video. If you want to have good weapons and also good accessories, you have to entirely rely on Lady Luck. Just no. Because of this, you will find yourself sometimes in a situation where maybe one of your characters actually does a bit of damage, but then the others just do single digit damage, and this just makes you go towards the boring EPS grinding in order to try to counter this. Also, the shop lottery has a chance of giving you a charm, specific accessories that give quite good boosts but that are rare to find, so another gacha thing has been added to the list. Per se, the SRPG aspect of this game can be enjoyed, but sometimes it becomes extremely frustrating, especially towards the end of the game. If at the start it seems rather easy and you'll think to have understood it, later on you will face the truth, and that is that in reality it is way harder than what it looks like. Oh, also, this game presents a particular thing where you can actually destroy things with your attacks, and the price of this will be deducted from your pay, so sometimes it is possible that you are going to earn nothing from a mission if you have destroyed too many objects, and that you have to even pay money for the things you destroyed, which I find honestly a little good detail that makes it feel more realistic, as you are hunting for money and if you damage something to your work, you have to pay for it. When a protagonist levels up, the game gives you 6 points to distribute between various stats, of which there is to highlight the differentiation the game does between the various attack stats, which are all binding to specific types of weapons. A frustrating thing the game does is obligating you to use determined charters in some stages. It isn't a thing that it does often, but when the game does it, it can be quite frustrating, especially in one specific battle in chapter 12. This is especially frustrating because every player has its own playstyle and its own favorite charters, and because of this, making you use determined charters that maybe you've never used because you didn't like them in a story stage is quite cruel, to be honest. In between this, we have the Gatekeeper space, where you can do various things, from accepting secondary missions, to training with whoever you want, to then play a ghostly version of Pandemic, which is actually quite entertaining and is explained better than many things in the game. Then you can change your equipment, talk to your party, go to the shop and develop items, which however is an activity I have never partaken in during the entire game. Training with your teammates is another way to increase your affections using TP, aka training points, earned by playing paranormal or by doing missions, and they also increase some skills that can only be increased via training that give you benefits such as discounts at the market or an increase in the number of traps you can place in a stage. Playing paranormal is also a good way to earn a bit of XP and TP, especially if you win, and games can be pretty quick, lasting only a turn, or pretty long, and I also have to say, it is kind of entertaining to play it once in a while. The secondary missions are generic missions where you are given a map, a ghost beat, and you have to take it down in an allocated number of turns. They have various degrees of difficulty and also an indication of how many turns you are going to have in the figure of the ghost appearance, which is classified as short, normal or long. In general, this game doesn't have many other things to do other than going forward with the main story, as the two really secondary things in this game offers are paranormal and the side missions, both of which can become quite boring after a bit of time. The game lasts for around 20-25 hours, depending on how much you grinded for exp and how many times you have to redo some stages, and its replayability value can be considered good because of the various charter finals you can obtain. However, the game really doesn't incentivize the player to replay it that much to obtain them. Talking about the art style, this game is by no means bland and shows personality in the character designs and in animated CGs. Character design is really well done, and so it is the Ghost one, with very creative designs, and fun fact, the artist of this game, Chinatsu Kurahana, later on worked on Fire Emblem Three Houses, which makes you understand that she is good. However, the backgrounds in the visual novel section follow the formula of being real places that were slightly modified to make them blend in with the game art style, and they look strange, as if being a little out of place, but the more you see them, the more you just get to terms with that and the less you'll notice. The 3D objects that you can see in the SRPG phases are honestly okay, you won't see them too often, especially if you skip the battle cutscenes, but they are there to make the stage realistic. In general, the SRPG part is unique in terms of how it looks, as it is a sort of tablet around which you have the various health bars and useful details of the enemies and of your party. The various CGs that the game offers are all animated and all of them are really good looking, just like this game art style in general. In fact, I think that the art style direction of this game is the best thing about the game, being really particular and making it stand out, which just shows how superb it really is. As for the sound department, the various soundtracks are okay, they don't really remain ingrained in the player's memory that much, but they do a very honest job. This game presents also a Japanese voiceover that isn't always present in the visual novel part of the game, but that sometimes makes an appearance, and it is surely enjoyable. I think the voice actors did a good job, but I don't think it is that memorable, which is just a flaw that applies to practically every aspect of this game's sound department. Now, on the technical level, this game doesn't have any issues except for one. Who was the person that decided to make the binding for the controls? Because they are abnormal. Like, if you are playing with a controller you have no problem, but playing with the keyboard is an absolute nightmare for the first few hours of the game. So, let's play a little game. Do you want to know which key is bounded to the button A of an Xbox controller? I'll give you some seconds to think about it. Okay, now I'm going to say that you are 99% wrong, as the key they chose was you. Let me repeat it, it was you. Look at your keyboard to see where it is. In general, the key bindings of this game are unorthodox and annoying. You get to terms with it as time passes, but it still continues to be strange even after dozens of hours in it. Moreover, you can remap them, which... yeah, it's annoying. Tokyo Twilight Ghost Hunters Daybreak Special Gigs is a strange game, which I can't really bring myself to describe either as a good game nor as a bad game. It just exists. The SRPG part of the game, while actually being quite solid, is hindered by various problems that make the game experience become quite frustrating, especially at the end of the game. The missing of a save function during the visual novel part is something that I can't bring myself to really understand, but it surely isn't the worst problem of this game. While the art style is really great and unique, the story of this game is kind of lackluster and nothing that special, except for the kind of different ending that is ruined by the post-credits scene. However, the lack of any sort of explanation for some of the key mechanics of the game is kind of irritating. Sure, the player can understand them, given the time to experiment with them, but it can be quite annoying for some things that you don't even know exist if you don't explore the game a bit or if you don't know beforehand. I personally don't even know who to recommend this game to. As a visual novel, it is honestly good and visual novel players will surely appreciate it, especially if they are into occult stories and such, but as a SRPG game, it has a lot of problems that wouldn't really make me recommend it to SRPG enjoyers, even though it is surely better than the gameplay of other games such as Hyper Devotion Noir and others. In the end, my recommendation is go see some gameplays on YouTube and then decide whether it is worth your time or not. If it is, consider that you can snatch it on Steam for €10, which is honestly a fair price for what the game has to offer. If you arrived here, thank you very much for watching this video. Imagine that I've said all the things that normally YouTubers say in this part, and because of that I don't have really anything else to say, so this is all from SigmaOni. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.